Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A content thing, podcast, YouTube video, whatever it is however you're experiencing it right now.
Everything to all people.
Yeah. This is season 12, episode 13. Season 12 is our sort of throwbacks to favorite characters and teams.
Yeah.
So we're sort of showing off the cream of the crop for us personally, both now and sort of throughout our tenure of Injustice, every team that we've really liked playing.
And it should be really clear either why they're really good or why we like them.
Yeah.
And most obviously, actually, in this case, is because this is Bounty Hunter Lobo. And the eagle-eyed among you will notice that our avatar is Lobo.
Mm-hmm. So this is a team that is Bounty Hunter Lobo, Hawk Girl, and Rebirth Raven. Lobo's passive is Hooked, which is when Lobo performs a special 2, the enemy cannot tag out until the fire damage over time runs its course. Every successful special 2 makes the next special 2 damage and damage over time length go up by 20%. He's got 1,250 attack and 950 health.
Which is low compared to more recent challenge goals, but at one point he had the highest attack of any character that was available in the game.
Yeah.
I just want to point out a couple things, or I read out one paragraph from the wiki. It says, Hooked will cause Lobo's opponent to burn for 1% of Lobo's damage stat for 5 seconds, 5% total, upon using Special 2. Special 2's stated damage is not penalized, but it actually does 16.666% damage less than stated, or in other words, it will do the stated damage at one passive stack, i.e. on his second special used. 1 extra second of burning is added for each special used. Mm-hmm. So I believe, but this is my memory, because I remember I was very excited when Bounty Hunter Lobo was added. There was the one Lobo that was in the store, I think, and then Bounty Hunter Lobo was added. He was released for the first time pre-Tantu Totem, because I remember his passive being pretty useless. Relying on special 2s and trying to stack his special 2s would take too long. So, the stacking part didn't really come into play. Mm-hmm. And when I first started playing him, for the longest time, actually, not just when I first started playing, but just for all the different times, I thought that his biggest problem was that his special 2 wasn't ranged enough. The first hit is ranged only a little bit. If you have 2 bars immediately on tag in and you can start your special 2 right away, the first hit will connect despite the shove that Master's Death Card gives. Because the longer you wait, the further Master's Death Card shoves. So if you do it right away, then it will hit. The second, third, and fourth hits are all ranged, so that's not the problem. But the issue is how much damage comes from the first hit. So one of the fights where every hit was critical let us know that the first hit does about 30%, the second hit does about 10%, the third hit does about 40% of the damage, and the last hit does 20% when you max out all the levels. So that first hit, you're losing 30% if you whiff on that, and that's significant.
It's big, yeah.
Yeah. So the heavy combo shoves the opponent back, and from the animation, it looks like the opponent shoved out of range of Special 2. The first hit of Special 2, and it is if you wait until the animation is finished. But if you completely commit to doing Special 2, and you start sort of smacking the button before the animation for the swipe combo is completed, the first hit can connect.
Yeah.
And in a lot of those cases, what you might want to say is, well, then it's chaining. But in this case, it's actually not true chaining, because even if they weren't blocking for the original swipe combo, every once in a while, they will block the special. The first hit. Well, the whole special, actually.
Which is a little strange.
It is. So it's not ideal. It's not true chaining, but you do have that window of opportunity where you can get your value, like the 30%.
Is chaining the term? I always think of it in like fighting game terms when I think of like comboing, right? Like a true combo is something that you can't like block or break.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not true chaining. So a lot of times,
but I'm saying is chaining is that a phrase that you're picking up from like the boards or something? Okay.
Yeah. And also with the scrolling, like Street Fighter 2. I used to play Street Fighter 2. And so there's certain combos where they can't block and they're just totally vulnerable. Like I remember So, did I ever tell you this? I used to play Street Fighter 2, not often. I didn't have a lot of money. Yeah. But whenever I played, I would play second player because I wouldn't want to play on my own, because if I played on my own, there's a good chance I would just lose the fight.
Yeah.
So, when you play with somebody, the gentleman's agreement is whoever you fight, like, to win on the first one. Yeah. Whoever wins the first one lets the loser win the second one, and the third fight's for all the beans.
Yeah.
So then I'd have a better chance of getting 3 fights in for my quarter. Back in the days when video games were a quarter.
So would you play out the second one, and then just, if it looked like you were going to win, then you'd let the other guy beat you up? Or would you just let him beat you up?
No. It's that you play to try, and then you concede the fight if it
looks like you're about to win.
Right. And so because I was always playing second player, the 2 best characters in Street Fighter 2, in my mind, for playing like just live against another human being, are Ken and Ryu. This
is from somebody who has experience in the game, but no sort of knowledge of, just like, not like you've ever been to like a tournament or anything.
No. Yeah. But there was, so as I got better playing Ken and Ryu, like the hardest move is the Hurricane Punch.
Yeah.
Where you go up, and it's similar to shooting the energy ball.
Like the Hadouken?
Yeah. But when you do the Hurricane Punch, so there were 3 levels of strength of punches, 3 levels of strength of kicks. And the most damaging punch had like a build-up and a time where nothing was happening.
Yeah.
But the less damaging punch, a light punch, had almost no time. Yeah. So I got to the point where I could... Whatever happened in the first 2 fights, I wouldn't use the strategy until the third fight. So if it was somebody I hadn't played before, it was a strategy I could use, but I could only do it from the left side because the movement is...
Or from the right side?
Sorry, the right side. Sorry, the second player side. Right. You're correct. The right side. But I could do... that Hurricane Punch on light over and over again, so they could either block, or not block. Yeah. They couldn't attack me because there was no.
And for people who had like limited experience, I'm sure there's something that you can do as a response to that, but they certainly would mostly not know what to do about it.
Well, you need to have perfect timing. I think that if when you release your block, it has to be perfect, but the window opening is so tiny that most of the time people could not do anything except for either just keep on taking the damage that was reduced by blocks, or then once he let it go, I would just keep on smacking.
So what you're saying is you annoyed some people down at the arcade.
I did.
It
wasn't even the arcade; it was the corner store because there was.
You won some games, but you probably made some enemies where they're like, "That kid just hits me with the same move over and over again. What am I supposed to do?"
Yeah. So, all right, what were we saying about Lobo? Okay, so there's an entire Lobo playlist in the description. And if you're like us and you don't want to use a power generating gear in the 3rd slot, and because Master's Death Card and Tentu Totem are otherwise 1 hit shy of generating enough power for 2 full bars, the best combo really is to do that swipe combo. Even though it's not true chaining, you swipe combo, you land your special 2, and you don't lose out 30% of the damage. His swipe combo is great for this. It's better than most, actually, because it is a fully ranged shotgun. So the opponent can't be too far away to be hit, no matter how far Master's Death Card shoves them. And more importantly, they are not too far away for you to generate power by hitting, which is sort of the point of doing it, to get that second bar. However, there's, again, that same vulnerability, right? Lobo is going to be vulnerable to an opponent with power because after your swipe combo, it can still be difficult to time your special 2 correctly. Immediately, like I said, immediately after completing the swipe combo, just mash away at this special 2. Yeah. Even before the animation for swipe combo ends, because if you wait until the animation is over, then it's too late. You've lost your opportunity. The other way you can do this too, which is harder to do, is you do the swipe combo, and you have to do it early enough to get your special 2 off before the opponent with power does a special, and late enough so that you close the distance and you're close enough for the first hit of your special 2, that 30% of total damage makes contact. And most of the time, I can't do that properly. So it's better to just try to do it really fast instead of smacking them and being assured that you're going to be close enough, but run the risk of getting hit by their special if the opponent's got a bar of power.
Yeah.
And our previous solution to this was using Red Lantern Hal Jordan. And he would, with his special 1, take away the opponent's power before bring Lobo in. And the reason why Red Lantern Hal Jordan works so well with Claw of Horus is even if the opponent has LexCorp gear set to reverse power drain, shattering all gears before the second special one finishes means that at least the second special one will drain, even if the first doesn't. So that was our Claw of Horus, Astro Harness, and Enchantress Companion gears. So you tag in, they can't do anything to you because Astro Harness. When you do your first special one, you're not losing health. And your power recharges for that first bar again before your Astro Harness invulnerability is finished. Mm-hmm. So then you can stack the shatters with the Enchantress Companion Gear skulls flying in. So the alternate version we used for this team, Bounty Hunter Lobo, is back in December 2022, if you want to look it up, or just look in the playlist. It was to only give him Tantu Totem and use Batgirl to start him with the second bar. And that's the usual problem, right? If his special 2 doesn't knock out the opponent, you're going to waste time getting back to 2 bars of power. The current version you're using, his third gear, is Quake Engine. It's Rebirth Raven, like you said, and Hawkgirl. And as good as it is to boost the amount of damage over time, it is also great that the damage over time is repeated with the Quake Engine. And combine that with his passive, and the opponent is unable to tag out. And this can be great against teams that have a tag out or tag in effect. And this is sort of the theory, but in practical terms, when he's only doing 5% of his health or his attack stat, that's not a lot. And you can really see this against the Blackest Night Flash team, where it really doesn't move the needle much for the opponent. You can just bring Lobo in, do your special 2, let him have the damage over time, and they're not really healing that fast or generating power that fast. Mm-hmm. Now, there's lots of fun things you can do with this, keeping them from tagging in. And one of the things that we used to do, or we've done before, was doing against New 52 Shazam, right? Because he can't be knocked out if you drop him below, is it 10%? I can't remember now. 10% health?
Yeah.
Without actually knocking him out in the one hit, dropping him completely to 0. Because when his passive is triggered both ways, when he's stuck there and invulnerable, or when he's invulnerable at the end, you can power up Lobo 2 Special 2, right? If he's not taking any damage.
You do it basically as many times as you can get the power for it. Yeah.
And if it's the first time before Shazam's tagged out and before he comes back on his passive, he has to stay and take it all because the damage over time just keeps getting longer and longer. Then his Special 2 becomes so powerful that one hit from it is enough to knock out high health opponents. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is you're charging up a special, while you're charging up a Special 2, you are potentially vulnerable to Shazam, that if he has Necron Scythe, which is doing lots of damage when Shazam's health is low, all it takes is, flick, and he's all of a sudden got a ton of power, a bit more health, and he's hurting you real bad. Mm-hmm. And it seems like one of those things that's fun to do, but it's actually pretty ineffective in fights to play against New 52 Shazam like that. And if you tag in one of Lobo's teammates to wait out the time before New 52 Shazam can tag out, waiting for the damage over time to finish, somebody's eating some damage. And you're also letting Shazam's teammates build up to 3 bars of power potentially, right? Mm-hmm. And that's dangerous. So Rebirth Raven on this team can steal the power, which is a solution, or repeatedly use Lobo Special 1, which can be quick enough to avoid damage without doing more damage over time. But you definitely, on a team like this, you get stuck actually. You don't have the flexibility of getting rid of opponents when your other teammate, Hawkgirl, locks them in also. Mm-hmm. Now, Rebirth Raven seems like the perfect solution, but it's a little bit hard because she will take some damage unless she has power, can steal some power from Shazam, and protect herself by doing a quick special. So if she tags in, she's good for that moment. Mm-hmm. If you're letting her sit while the damage over time sort of runs its course, that's a problem. Now, we've always wanted Lobo to be great, right? Because, Lobo's our avatar. This version of the team is almost there to be great. If it were easier to get a full damage Special 2 immediately on tagging like Teen Titans Raven or New 52 Wonder Woman, where it's fully ranged first hits, where you don't have to worry about timing it, I think he would be great. And like the wiki says, his stated Special 2 damage is not reduced for having the status effect, which most of them are reduced. Mm-hmm. I think those are the main points. And like I said, you can see the examples of the fights is you're going to see in Black Knight Flash Team where we just use their special 2 with abandon and it makes no difference. He's pretty good. Could be great. I would be really happy to see a different Lobo skin that was an improvement on this. There's so many other candidates, but part of the reason, so he's on this list of great teams, not because he's actually great for everybody to play, but he's great because he's our favorite Lobo, and we like Lobo.
So there we go.
Yeah.
So that was our team discussion. Lots of Lobo talk.
Lobo.
Let's maybe do a question/comment.
Yeah. So I don't know if Burke's homemade memes. If we finished,
I think we did. We've given it a lot of time and space and talked about it a lot. So I think I'm gonna look at sort of a couple of paired comments because they were from the same episode and sort of us talking about our rambling a little bit.
Oh yeah, where we talked about politics a lot.
For like pretty much the whole time. So QXC7434 says, longtime fan, and I honestly just wanted to say that although I haven't touched Injustice in years, y'all make excellent content. You could both go into any field of media and succeed tremendously. You're both very informed yet open-minded as well. I honestly feel like I've gained a lot of insight from your discussions, and I'm grateful to have found the channel. I wish nothing but the best for you guys, truly. And then Andrew Wabe 7822 also says, I think the politics takes are great. Keep them up. And so first off, these are 2 great comments. I think in general, I have kind of an interesting relationship with compliments, right? I think a lot of people do, where it can be it's nice to receive them, but it can be a little bit sort of hard to know how to respond to them.
Right.
And so I read that, and my natural response is to push back, where it's like, well, I think you're really overestimating us a little bit in terms of like being successful in any field of media. I think there's...
But that can be true, but it can also be a nice compliment. What works really well in general with compliments is the more specific you are, the better they are. Yeah,
because there's like you look really nice today, or like, oh wow, that, like, I really like how your pants match your shirt, or like that accessory, or like what you did with your hair, right? There's like specific concrete things where, especially if the other person sort of has a sense of that as well, and is like, oh yeah, that is something that I specifically put more time or effort into. It can feel really nice and specific because it's not just somebody's, giving you a thumbs up and saying, good job. It's like you sort of see where they're coming from and you feel more seen and perceived. Yeah.
I think that's really it, right? That part you just said about being seen, and in my mind, I hadn't been able to articulate properly, but it is exactly that. Because when you're being specific with it, instead of just using sort of bromides or generalities, then it feels more real, right? And the creepier kind of compliments to me or the ones that have the most potential to be creepy, are the kind that have nothing to do with anything that you've chosen.
Yeah. Like if somebody were to compliment you on your racial features,
right,
and relate them to that, you go, oh, that's really weird because I didn't do anything about that. And also, how are you relating to my racial features?
So to me, that's the extreme of not being able to take credit for, right? It's one thing where somebody's over complimentary and their interpretation or understanding of what other people are capable of compared to you is maybe you feel out of whack. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, they, like I said, they can be wrong, but they still feel that way. So that's still kind of cool.
Yeah.
But when it's something that you really have no control over, and you're not choosing it and you're not doing it, and it's just something that is you, I know it's meant to be complimentary, but I've had so many compliments with quotes like that, air quotes around it, that are, borderline racist, that I cringe a little bit when the point is that these
also
are different.
Us talking as straight men. I think if you're like a woman or somebody who has the potential to feel more unsafe when somebody's approaching you like that, there's a lot higher capacity for somebody to say something and for it to really feel entirely gross or entirely creepy and make you feel bad instead of good, where there's like, you're like, nothing good is coming out of this situation.
And
this is to be clear, these are the opposite of that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to me, it's like, and here's the thing, it's not just that I'm a man, right? Part of it is that I've made myself physically not look vulnerable to the point where, when we had new neighbors and I went and knocked on the door to let them know their garage door was open, I think they were afraid to open the door when they saw me outside the window.
They saw you and they didn't open the door for
right,
you.
because I knew they were inside because it was dark and their lights were on, so then I knew there were people, and I saw them look out and they chose not to answer the door.
Yeah.
It wasn't that dark, but still. Anyways.
They didn't know you were their neighbor at the time.
No, they just thought I was some dude at their door that they didn't want to talk to.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, yeah. Anyways, I do like these compliments, but that's I think natural to like the kind of compliments where, like you said, you feel seen.
Because I could push back where I go, I don't feel like I have the skills to go into most fields of media, actually. Right. But then being informed yet open-minded and that the discussions are insightful are things that I value. I'm really glad because I try to be informed and open-minded. Yeah. That's important to me as a thing that I am. And so for somebody who listens to this to get that sense of me feels nice. Yeah. Because ideally, I am open-minded and I am informed, and I know there's obviously limitations to that, but like that's the goal, right? That's the whole sort of goal. And contrary to the first 15 minutes of this video, one of our goals, I don't know how many times we said it, but I know I've said it in real life in conversations, is one of our goals was to make this the kind of channel where it didn't always have to have like new insights to injustice content, because there's a limit, right? The game, not only is there a limit to how much you can play it, but that there's not even any new content for years. Mm-hmm. So the stuff we're discovering is very much incremental kind of knowledge, like little bits. Yeah. And ultimately, I appreciate that there are people who have followed us to just hear whatever we're talking about, because really it continues to baffle me slightly, right? That people want to hear what we have to say. And I don't think that like we're entirely boring people, but I think a lot of people are interesting people, right? Yeah. Like I think very few people have something in the core of their being that is like, oh, this is like a boring guy, you know? Yeah. So I don't necessarily think that I'm any more worthy of your time and attention and consideration than anyone else particularly. So I am genuinely thankful for people who stick around and listen to us just sort of yap about whatever. Yeah, this is the interesting related point to this, is that when you go to a really good fan convention, the best panels have really interesting people, and it feels like a sort of moderated, curated conversation between smart people who have interesting things to say and are specifically domain knowledgeable in something, and they are having an opportunity to talk about it and also, even if it's domain specific, if they're making connections to other things, holy crap, that's neat. This is why I value, like, there's not a lot of conventions I go to, and I'm really sad that the Toronto area, the GTA, doesn't have any hasn't had any science fiction fantasy conventions for the last few years, partly because of COVID, but partly because I guess it's just hard to run conventions. It gives me great appreciation for the one that Joe Walton does in Montreal. Yeah, Scintillation. It's relatively small, but even though she's, an award-winning author, that her background is as a fan. She started as a fan before she published anything. Mm-hmm. And she has a very clear idea on what she likes in panels. Yeah. And she does such a great job on both picking topics and picking the right people to be on the panels to talk about stuff. Yeah. Although I think for most like books and for literature and a lot of types of media, I think you do kind of have to be a fan to do a good job as a professional. 100%. I think it's almost a prerequisite for not for doing it, period, but because like almost anybody can do it, but for doing it well. Yeah. Yeah, because I think this is what a lot of that kind of media runs afoul of, right? The idea that if they don't really understand what people expect from it, if they don't understand how it's usually done, and so if you're going to subvert some of those expectations, you have to do it in a way that acknowledges it. Otherwise, it feels very shallow and childish. Yeah. And I think there's sort of it's always the paired approaches, right? Where the more you know, the more you can sort of work within those norms, and the better you have an understanding of how to sort of like do genre twisting stuff and to put new spins on things. But also, the more of an outsider's perspective you have, the more opportunity you have if you write something that's really good. Maybe you're not a fan of a specific type of like sci-fi or fantasy specifically, but you're a fan of sort of the written word and fiction in general. You have the opportunity to sometimes come at it from a new perspective that ends up being really sort of fresh. And there's that sort of balance between knowing what you're doing and sort of having that, not necessarily formal education, but almost like the equivalent of formal education, right? Or coming at it from an outsider's perspective with enough respect and care and skill at your craft, but then also not being sort of stuck in those tropes and norms and being limited in what you can imagine and make by what you've seen already.
Yeah. See, a good way of putting it that somebody, I can't even remember where I heard this. I'm sure I've heard a bunch of different places. I was hoping to give credit for the idea of it, but the way people talk about how this piece of media is in conversation with this other thing, and that whole idea that it's like talking to each other, it finally clicked, right? Because if you're just doing it because you think, oh yeah, this is, say, science fiction-y, but you don't really have an understanding of what science fiction is except, hey, rocket ships, explosions in space, then you run the risk of doing stuff that's been done before and doing it poorly.
Yeah.
So that and if it's something that's popular enough, the original thing that is, then you're going to really suffer in comparison.
Yeah.
So what was the point we were making?
I don't know if we had a larger point. I think we're just kind of bopping around. You're talking about appreciation for panels and conventions and just hearing
talking.
us yap.
Yeah.
So I think we were just talking about talking.
Yeah, so that was what my original plan for this channel when we're doing it was, that there would be a lot more of that sort of improvisational stuff, because I got to be honest with you, when you see how people put in a lot of time for scripted videos and high production and that kind of almost like a TV quality, I never saw that for us. Big part because I didn't see us making enough money off this that I could do less work. Like, this was always going to be a hobby, and as a hobby, it couldn't be such a big time sink that it took away from anything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make YouTube stuff, and I have talked about it before. That sort of really highly edited video I did a while back was a very different mode of making it, and it was creatively satisfying on a very different level, but it was also massively more effortful. And I'll just bring it back one last time to sort of compliments, and I think there's the same thing with criticism, where you can have good and helpful and meaningful criticism, where like one of the things that somebody said about the video was, they're like, this is good, I liked it. If it was, perhaps like a touch, like, I think they put it in like quotes, they were like, like over edited, right? And I read that and I went, yeah. So this person said they liked it, which I appreciate, and their feedback was that there was too much stuff in it. And I was like, and that's exactly how I felt about it, which is I was doing it maximalist. I was putting more stuff in than I needed to learn everything, right? If I could do an editing thing, I was doing the editing thing. I was seeing if I tried to do everything, how much time and effort would that be? And so when I heard over edited, I'm like, okay, well now all of a sudden with that little piece of like what I think is exceptionally valid criticism, and not them saying like, all your things sucked, or like, oh, I would have done it differently, even just saying, maybe a touch over edited. I was like, wow, now I trust their whole opinion sort of a lot more. So the thing that made me actually really appreciate the feedback over and above, I would just appreciate it no matter what. Right. But it was the fact that they actually did have something sort of that was at least a little mildly negative, and it really strongly aligned with how I felt about it. So I was like, I trust this person's opinion because I feel like they're seeing what I'm seeing when I'm looking at this. And so if they like it, if they don't like it, I feel like we're sort of talking about it on a similar sort of wavelength. Right.
It's like writing a book report after you've actually read the book compared to not reading a book and then trying to fill it with, empty kind of, I want to say calories, it's not calories, but just empty, whatever, meaningless, generic kind of comments. So the more specific, the better. And I think that kind of approach, not advice, approach, works best in general for both criticism and compliments are really sort of a sort of category of criticism.
It's like positive and negatively valenced feedback, right? Exactly. Where positive feedback is compliments and negative feedback is criticism. Yeah.
Although criticism, I think, is sometimes used to cover that, like as feedback. Yeah.
So anyways, I think we'll do one more thing
one
really quick. Yeah. Because JB-KF9NN says, playing on a Samsung S22 and it seems my phone isn't compatible with Helium and it doesn't appear in the Play Store. Is there a similar backup without root app you guys would recommend?
We don't know. I mean, the one that we need the backup on still has Helium. What's weird to me, after this comment, I took a look in the store. The Helium premium key is still in the App Store, so you can buy it, but the app itself is not. So
that is strange.
So you can pay for the upgrade to unlock features. You just can't have the software to do it. There was never any other good non-root options. Apparently, there's still lots of good root options.
Yeah.
But I don't think rooting a phone is for most people.
I think one thing that you could do, which is a lot more work that isn't root, is sort of copying and pasting your files over from like your actual device. But I don't know how hard or easy it would be to store your saves from that. It is one of those unfortunate things where I think that is the sort of trade-off when you're doing glitches, right?
Yeah.
Is because you're doing something that you're not really supposed to, so stuff can go weird or wrong in ways that you don't really expect.
Yeah.
So whenever you're doing anything that you consider to be higher risk, you're kind of in that tinkerer mode, like using the device in ways that the device is allowing you to use it or the software is allowing you to use it, but not in ways that it was intending.
Right.
So you kind of have to put yourself a little more in that mindset where it's the kind of thing where a lot of people will do a glitch in a game. But if you really want to protect yourself, you have to sort of take those extra steps to protect yourself as well, not just take those extra steps to sort of take advantage of something within the game. But it is obviously sort of dependent on the specific thing you're taking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. I think that's
a good
as good a place as I need to end it.
So I might, the fights I think are interesting enough. I'm going to maybe let the video run a little bit longer, only after we finish talking, so you can get the joy of watching this Lobo team.
So there we go. To finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely patrons on Patreon. That is Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi 127, and Nora Klimek supporting us on the credited level. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to everybody who's watched the whole video, hung out with us this whole time, and who supports us in whatever way you do.
And if you want to support even more, what would be nice is join the conversation. If you have, or you know of an app that is good at backing up other app data, let us know in the comments.
That would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. You'd be helping out the rest of the audience. And I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so there we go. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Komoda.